Welcome back to Face the Nation. We spoke earlier with President Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and we began by asking him about the threat to Americans outside the U.S.
Well, Ed, first of all, it is something that we are very closely tracking, whether there are any threats to the U.S. homeland or to U.S. interests anywhere else in the world. What the intelligence community has assessed to date is that the relevant terrorist groups in Afghanistan do not possess advanced external plotting capabilities, but of course they could develop them, and that is something that we need to be very focused on. What we have proven over time in other countries, Ed, is that we are capable of suppressing the terrorism threat, including external plotting capabilities, without a large permanent presence on the ground. We have done that in places like Libya and Somalia, places like Yemen, and we will do that in Afghanistan as well as we go forward.
Is there any possibility after Tuesday that some kind of retaliatory attack on ISIS-K will involve sending U.S. personnel back into Afghanistan?
The president does not intend to start a new war in Afghanistan. He intends to end the one after 2 decades. That being said, he also is going to talk to his commanders about whatever set of tools and capabilities they need to get the people who attacked and killed our troops at the Kabul airport, and to make sure that we are degrading and debilitating the group, ISIS-K, that conducted this attack. So, yes, we will continue to take the kinds of over-the-horizon strikes like we did over the weekend against the ISIS-K facilitators and plotters. And yes, we will consider other operations to go after these guys, to get them, and to take them off the battlefield.
In plain English, over-the-horizon means from somewhere else, right?
Over the horizon means from outside of Afghanistan without keeping thousands of troops on the ground in the middle of another country's civil war.
Got it. There are a few hundred Americans left this weekend in Afghanistan that the State Department is aware of that want to get out of the country. Will they all get out by Tuesday?
What we are doing right now, Ed, is working one by one with those individuals and their families to direct them to a rally point near the airport, to come into the airport and to get on the planes and go home. There are those Americans, though, Ed, and this is important, who have chosen thus far not to leave Kabul. Maybe they've lived there for many years. Maybe they have extended family there. Our message to those Americans is that after August 31st, we will make sure there is safe passage for any American citizen, any legal permanent resident. And yes, we will ensure the safe passage of those Afghans who helped us to continue coming out after the 31st of August.
But how are you going to do that? And doesn't that mean relying on the Taliban?
This isn't about reliance. This is about ensuring that we use the leverage we have available to us, and it is considerable, to hold the Taliban to its commitments. The Taliban have both communicated to us privately and publicly that they will allow for safe passage. We're not just going to take their word for it. We've rallied dozens of countries from around the world to stand with us in saying to the Taliban that if they do not follow through on those commitments, there will be significant consequences. And the leverage we have, the economic leverage and the other forms of leverage we continue to possess, we believe will be effective in ensuring that we can get out other people who want to come out after the 31st of August.
Economic leverage I get, because you can squeeze a country's official with sanctions all you want. But if you're pulling all your U.S. military equipment out of there, if you're pulling out all, if not most, of your diplomatic personnel out of there, what on earth kind of leverage is there left?
You just identified economic leverage, which I wouldn't put off to one side. We are talking about Afghanistan's relationship with the international financial system, its access to any kind of reserves and resources. That is a significant source of leverage. The United States is rallying the international community in a united way to ensure that the commitment on safe passage is not just a commitment to us, but to everyone else. And then we obviously retain a variety of capabilities that are both not economic and not diplomatic that we could bring to bear in the event that American citizens are somehow held at risk in Afghanistan going forward.
Does the U.S. plan to leave State Department personnel in Afghanistan after Tuesday?
Our current plan is not to have an ongoing embassy presence in Afghanistan as of September 1st, but we will, in at least a permanent presence, but we will have means and mechanisms of having diplomats on the ground there, be able to continue to process out visa applicants, be able to facilitate the passage of other people who want to leave Afghanistan, and over time, depending on what the Taliban does, how it follows through on its commitments with respect to safe passage, how it deals with the treatment of women, how it deals with its international commitments not to allow Afghanistan to become a base for terrorism in the rest of the world. We can make further determinations about both diplomatic presence and other issues as we go. But the onus will be on the Taliban to prove out its commitments and its willingness to abide by the obligations that it has undertaken and that are imposed upon it by international law.
Jake, you're someone who's known the president a long time. You work alongside him every day. They call the presidency the loneliest job in the world. How has his morale been in recent days?
I would describe the president's approach to this in recent days in one word: focused. He is laser focused 24 hours a day on protecting our forces there and getting this mission complete, getting these folks home safely, and then executing the retrograde in a professional way.
Does he still have full confidence in his entire national security team?
Well, that's obviously a question for you to ask, and that is something that, from our perspective, is your job. Our job is to execute. Our job is to get this mission complete. And right now, the president is looking to his entire national security team to make that happen, to take this next critical, dangerous period where we face acute threats as we speak, minute by minute, hour by hour, from ISIS-K, to ensure our troops have the protection that they need and to ensure they have what they are required, what is required to be able to carry out the rest of this mission.
The whole goal here was to get U.S. military forces out of Afghanistan by September 11th. Whose idea was it to use 9/11 as the deadline?
When the decision was taken by the president to draw down our forces in Afghanistan, and he took that decision back in April, we had an impending May 1st deadline, at which point the Trump administration had negotiated the removal of all American forces from the country. The president asked his commanders, how much time do you need to be able to get out of Afghanistan in a way that you feel will protect the forces and allow you to execute a drawdown that also protects our allies as they were coming out? And they gave him a timetable of 120 days, of 4 months. And that is what has guided his decision-making about coming out of Afghanistan from the start, has been the tactical advice of his commanders on the ground, and that is how we will ultimately bring this mission to a close.
So they didn't explicitly say 9/11, they said 4 months, and you guys all looked at the calendar and realized 9/11 was there and said, okay, let's try to do it by then?
What we said was that the mission would end before the 20th anniversary of September 11th. That is what the administration laid out, and it was based on a 120-day timetable as briefed to the president by the commanders, who felt that that was the appropriate timetable to try to execute the drawdown and the completion of the U.S. military mission in Afghanistan.
Part of why I asked this, and I know you don't oversee everything, you're in charge of national security, but this summer there was the July 4th deadline in the hope of declaring independence from the pandemic. There's this 9/11 deadline where now the Taliban essentially is going to be back in control of Afghanistan on the 20th anniversary. Has there been any conversation about perhaps not using dates on a calendar to set White House policy anymore?
Ed, I got to tell you, right now, what we are thinking about all day and all night, including every single hour of last night, is how do we protect our forces at the Kabul airport against imminent threats from ISIS-K, and how do we get those remaining American citizens and others out of the country. That's what I'm focused on. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. And we are going to keep our focus on that until we get the job done.
And we appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about all of that. Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor to President Biden. Thank you very much, and we'll be right back. We turn now to America's COVID crisis. More than 90,000 Americans are hospitalized right now with COVID-19 nationwide. Most of those cases are related to the Delta variant. CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassmann reports from Atlanta.
Today's double trouble along the Gulf Coast has a nickname, Covida, a mashup of COVID and Ida. The approaching hurricanes punishing winds and rain, and evacuees sheltering inland, spreading the virus. But this pandemic already has a first circle of misery, and it's Florida, with another bleak week ahead. Florida's averaging more than 21,000 new cases a day, and the death toll keeps climbing. Caseloads buckle hospitals. Under the gun, Governor Ron DeSantis and his disdain for vaccine and masking mandates. A state court overruled his threat to withhold state funding from schools that impose mask mandates. Contrast his approach with Oregon Governor Kate Brown, alarmed and getting tough. This weekend, she reinstated mask mandates indoors and outdoors, regardless of vaccination status. More schools across America will reopen this week. Educators have reason to be edgy. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, more than 180,000 children tested positive for COVID between August 12th and August 19th. Some of those cases have dire outcomes. The Delta variant can kill kids, including a boy in Houston.
This was a previously totally healthy child who contracted COVID and died.
Without better masking and vaccination rates, a leading forecasting model has a grim prediction. Another 100,000 COVID deaths in America by early December. The good news, vaccines are sharply up. Almost 1 million more shots every day. Ed?
Mark, thank you. We go now to former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who's also a member of the Pfizer board and the author of a new book, Uncontrolled Spread, Why COVID-19 Crushed Us and How We Can Defeat the Next Pandemic. It comes out next month. Doctor, good morning to you. We mentioned your associations with Pfizer, and my understanding is you have a little more information on the future of the vaccine for children.
Well, Dr. Fauci was on TV this morning talking about the potential for an authorization this fall. Pfizer is going to be in a position, the company I'm on the board of, as you mentioned, be in a position to file data with the FDA at some point in September and then file the application potentially as early as October. So that'll put us on a time frame where the vaccine could be available at some point late fall, more likely early winter, depending on how long FDA takes to review the application. Historically, they've taken 4 to 6 weeks to review these authorizations, as well as how much long-term follow-up data FDA requires on the kids in the clinical trial. If they require a longer-term median follow-up on the kids enrolled in the clinical trial, it could take longer to get to an authorization. But the agency will be in a position to make an authorization, I believe, at some point late fall, probably early winter, and probably they're going to base their decision on what the circumstances around the country, what the urgency is to get to a vaccine for kids.
So there's a possibility around the holidays, then at the end of the year, beginning of next year, that children down to age 5 at least could be getting shots.
I think that's right. So if Pfizer files the application at some point in October, that puts you on a timeline that it could be available, authorized at some point in November, late November, maybe early December. So that, again, puts you on a time frame that you could start rolling out these vaccinations before the end of the year.
Got it.
The data on kids 2 to 5 is going to be available in November.
So they could have it then by early next year then. It's all good news, because obviously there are a lot of parents about to send kids back into school. Some are already back in school, and there's growing concern, especially in the Northeast, that the infection rates could spike as school reopens in those states. I mean, what advice do you have for anxious parents at this point as they prepare to send the kids back?
Yeah, what we're seeing in the South is very concerning. An epidemic that coursed its way through the adult population is now coursing its way through children, particularly as they re-enter school. There's 300 kids a day being hospitalized around the country for COVID. And you look at some of the school districts down in the South, Tampa, as of August 10th, when they reopened school, has 10,000 kids that have already been diagnosed with COVID. Other districts are seeing similar effects. I think as we head back to school here in the Northeast, schools need to look at what's happening in the South and take adequate precautions. I don't think that we should be going into the school year lifting the mitigation that may have worked and probably did work last year to control outbreaks in the school setting until we have firm evidence on what works and what doesn't. I think we have to throw everything we can at this challenge of trying to keep the infection from becoming epidemic in the school setting. This Delta variant is very contagious. It spreads easily in that environment. The two best things that schools could be doing right now is frequent testing. Twice-a-week testing is very effective, and there's a lot of resources that have been made available to local school districts to do that, and also keeping students in geographic pods, social pods, so not letting students intermingle with the entire student body, but keeping them in defined pods, probably by their classroom. Those two elements alone, according to the literature, are probably the two most effective steps schools can be taking. And then using masks and improving ventilation is also going to be very important. And finally, getting kids vaccinated. About 50% of kids who are eligible to be vaccinated have been vaccinated. So there's still a lot of work we can do there, getting parents more information, trying to encourage parents to vaccinate their children.
We always appreciate you joining us on a Sunday morning, especially sharing that news about vaccinations and the hope for children, more children, younger children getting the shots soon. Dr. Gottlieb, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
And we'll be right back with an update on Hurricane Ida with the mayor of Baton Rouge, Sharon Broome. Stay with us. We want to go back tracking Hurricane Ida, which is about to make landfall in Louisiana. CBS News meteorologist and climate specialist Jeff Berardelli is tracking the storm. Jeff, an update just came out a few moments ago. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so the storm still has winds of 150, may eventually reach 155 before landfall, literally just shy of a Cat 5. This is really the strongest storm to impact this area in terms of wind intensity in modern history. So anybody there, this is the strongest storm you will ever experience in terms of wind. Although the surge won't be quite as strong as Katrina, the wind will be more catastrophic. And it's a strengthening storm at landfall, which means it has that momentum and inertia to really power through and create plenty of damage and power outages inland. That's a look at the radar. As you can see, the eye wall is literally about 10 miles away from the coast right now. So the eye wall is going to come on shore in about 45 minutes or so. All right, the big elephant in the room is, how does this compare with Katrina? So let's talk about that. This storm has winds of 150 miles an hour. Katrina had winds of 125. Katrina was a weakening system. So the winds with this system are much more intense than Katrina, and it will cause a lot more catastrophic wind damage. However, because Katrina was out in the Gulf of Mexico for 2 or 3 days, it was building up a mountain of water, and so when it pushed on shore, it pushed all that water on shore with 28 feet of storm surge. This one is likely to have about 16 feet of storm surge as it moves on shore. But you can see those winds, 142-mile-an-hour wind gusts this afternoon in Grand Isle, and as we head into New Orleans, well over 80, maybe 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts. This is a dangerous one. Again, be inside your home, away from windows, and have a mattress ready to put it on top of you and your family to protect you in case your structure were to collapse.
Jeff, I appreciate that you put those two storms next to each other, because what you're basically telling us is that this new storm has got a lot more wind behind it, whereas Katrina had a lot more water.
That's right, exactly. But this is going to have a lot of water, very dangerous and deadly.
Absolutely. 16 years to the day since Katrina hit. They're getting hit by another one. Jeff Berardelli, thank you so much. We go now to the mayor of Baton Rouge, Sharon Weston Broome. Mayor, thank you for joining us this morning on what I know is a busy time. Give us a sense of how your city is prepared or is preparing for this, and what concerns you have as the storm nears.
Well, thank you. We have prepared on every level from a city parish point of view. Our community partners and our residents have received the word for days now and have started to make preparation in terms of supplies for their families and food, medicine, and fuel. We are asking people right now to take shelter. It is not the time to try to evacuate. We're anticipating the storm will be in our area around 3 p.m. today.
And you have you got a lot of things going on in Baton Rouge. Among other things, you have a lot of universities there, like LSU, Southern University. Are you concerned at all about the student population that may be from out of state and doesn't appreciate the power and the importance of getting out of the way of these storms?
Well, I think our student population has been schooled, if you will, in terms of taking this very seriously, hurricane. So I'm confident that they are part of the fabric of our community, and we have gotten the word out to our universities and our colleges here as well. So we're all working through this together in Baton Rouge, and I believe that our citizens, all of them, are taking it very seriously, are remaining vigilant, calm, and strong as we work through this.
And you've got this hurricane, and of course you, like city leaders all over the country, are also dealing with the pandemic. How did you have to adjust either of your responses to either of those crises in order to deal with this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I have said, of course, that we're in the middle of 2 emergencies, a pandemic, as well as now a hurricane. And so our mayor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness plans for this type of dual emergency, if you will. But right now we're opening up one of our pre-storm shelters. And during that pre-storm shelter, we will have isolated areas for those people that test positive for COVID-19.
Oh, so you're breaking out an area for them just in case. And that, of course, takes space away from others who may just need a place to go. So it compounds the potential response here to this storm. I'm curious, Mayor, it's like we've said, 16 years since Katrina hit. How has Louisianans' response to hurricanes changed in those 16 years? In other words, if the storm warnings come and people like you tell them to leave or tell them to pack up and get ready, are they doing anything differently or more vigilantly now after that storm so many years ago?
I believe they are. Not only are we remembering Katrina, but we recently in 2016 had a flood that had a significant impact on our city and parish. And so ever since then, people have been very concerned, very guarded, very vigilant in terms of how we manage and navigate water here. Listen, water management is a way of life here in South Louisiana, and we take it very seriously. Our city has prepared using some of our American Rescue dollars in advance 6 weeks ago to start cleaning out drains and managing culverts and canals. And so in addition to that, just this week, our team has intensified their efforts. So we take water very seriously and weather events like this very seriously.
Well, Mayor Sharon Broome, we appreciate you taking the time today. We wish you the best of luck, and I have a feeling we may be talking to you again later in the week.
Thank you so much.
All right. We'll be right back. That's it for us today. Thank you for watching on this busy Sunday. For Margaret Brennan, I'm Ed O'Keefe. Stay with CBS News on your local station and on both our broadcast and digital networks as we continue to monitor Hurricane Ida. We leave you today honoring the 13 Americans killed in Afghanistan last week.